Excellent. Sorry. So, welcome everyone. That was me and Dimmy just talking about how my thumbnail is always me looking like this, and so we just wanted to see if we could do it with smiles. So yeah, if there's anyone here at all, feel free to say hello. Otherwise, we're just going to talk to each other, and it's going to be magical. I'm Brian. I'm the host of this, and this is Dimmy. Dimmy, would you like to say your full name, please, for me?
Hey TJ, my name is Dimitrios Gkirgkiris. The K's are silent. Hey Kristen.
Oh, amazing. I could listen to that all day. This is one of the few instances where I kind of like don't want to be the narrator and I just want to hear you just speak all the time. So, like, we could definitely do that. um,
No.
so, yeah. So, again, like, this is kind of just like an opportunity for us to talk about, authors, coming up, just like their stories. A lot of the time when people are introduced to an author, they're kind of like midway through either series 2 or 3 or something like that. So very rarely do we get to focus on the first in a series. So with yourself, you have a new release coming out. So what I kind of wanted from you, maybe to start us off with, is telling us a little bit more about why you've written the book that you have, a little bit more about it, and what you've kind of learned in your journey that's kind of brought you to this point.
Okay, that's a loaded question. So I wanted to write kind of a apocalypse book for a while, and I was also very much fascinated about how useful like science knowledge would be to this. I'm not a scientist by any means. I just I'm fascinated, let's say, by the science communicators. So in my head, I was trying to write a book of how would it look like if Neil deGrasse Tyson was the main character of the apocalypse or something, something of the sort. And then, of course, there should be some like fun side characters. Anyway, yeah, I wanted to write something that is closer to what I know. So the story starts in Germany, where I live. I live in Germany, but of course through the eyes of someone who is not local here, with everything that this might include. And of course, I hope that everyone likes Oktoberfest because that's where things happen.
Which is in September, isn't it?
It is in September. It's so weird. Like I was researching about it, and okay, yeah, yeah, it is in September. And what I learned writing this, man, I don't know. I learned a lot of things that I didn't know. About the area, the geopolitical situation, and I learned a lot about astrophysics, black hole. I mean, I was following these things, but it just when you're thinking in terms of like how can certain things fit in your story and how the multiverse theory and like the four fundamental forces can be used to create like a magic system. It was, uh, I think it's an easier way to learn things, instead of just
Absolutely.
reading them. Now I actually remember them even several months after I read about them. Yeah.
If only we knew that in school. As in,
Right.
like, kind of, yeah, it's just like
Yeah.
create a fantasy world. That's how you'll remember facts.
Yeah.
Um, but I suppose that's really interesting because one of the biggest pushbacks that you usually see within the community is that when a smart main character is typically anything but, or that it's just like, they're written as this genius, but it's not written in a smart way.
Yeah.
Or they're just tired of these, like, characters that are just like maybe one dimensional and angry bastards. Now, obviously, there's a lot of readership for full murder hobo kind of type, characters and stuff like that. And like they're really great. OPMC, fantastic. But there is a demand for the smart MC. So it's really interesting to kind of see. I'll be curious to know how your books will be received. So yeah, that's a really, really interesting angle. And what was it that kind of spurred you towards the kind of the scientific side? Have you experimented with that in any of your previous stories? Or is this just wanting something new?
No, I knew that I wanted to write a character who is looking things differently. And like in general, I've been thinking about how especially let's say for example in government positions, how different someone who comes from a management or from a lawyer background deals with governing, and how a scientist approaches things. Because one let's say profession focuses on maybe how truth can be presented so that it's perceived as valuable or right, while a scientist has like a very strict perception of truth, and how can we use this in order to make things better. And I think in general it's also, I mean, I like the creating stories where there is a lot of ways where you can go, but sometimes putting yourself in a box, which is the physics in
Hmm.
this example, is good. With a small like turning the knob a little bit by changing one law of physics and what that would entail in the story.
Excellent. And like, um, I suppose the next question I would have for that on the basis of it is that what sort of system did you create for this particular story?
Um, so the system is there are levels, there are skills every 10 levels. So sorry, there are classes every 20 levels, I think. You can upgrade the class every hey Jess,
Hi, Jess.
every 10 levels you get a boon to the skills. The skills are quite limited. uh,
Someone's
Skills
been
are
playing Hades.
yeah, a lot. I think I started this book before Hades, but yeah, I mean, it's kind of tough to avoid getting inspirations, even
Oh no, like
without
that's what they're
thinking.
there for. It's like
Yeah,
anyone that uses XP is using Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. I'm sorry.
right. Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's
And yeah, so upgrading skills, but it's mostly the let's say the XP, the class, the skill system is there, but it is very much connected to the universe. Oh, hello, Michael. Uh, to how
hello,
the
Chatfield.
the universe is. Yeah. To how the universe works and how the physics have changed in this world.
So with the classes going up maybe every 20 levels or something like that,
Mhm.
is it kind of like you go from like fighter to knight to something like that? Are they evolutionary in their kind of instances, or are they just additional classes that stack?
No, it's so there are no, let's say, paths that every character can choose. It's more of an evolution of what of their life's experiences and how they chose to level up their classes up to that point.
And what about the starting point for them? Is there like an assimilation period of where their kind of stats are generated at the very beginning? Or is that something that has to be earned from the beginning?
No, so in general, there are, let's say that there are some people who worked at a funeral home.
Hmm.
So obviously they became necromancers. The astrophysicist main character becomes gets skills on time, space manipulation. So he can manipulate the four fundamental forces, right?
Yeah.
So he can do not time magic, but like gravity, electromagnetic, weak force, strong force, stuff like that.
Yeah. And that's super cool. But like one of the things I need to know, like the undertakers, the kind of the funeral home people that become necromancers and stuff like that, does that necessarily mean they become evil? Or does that mean like you just have these normal,
No,
nice
no,
people, super empathetic people that can now raise the dead and they're like, I'm so sorry.
no. So yeah, that's a good thing. I don't think I have put any limitation, uh, but they've only raised monsters so far. And I think I should go back to the book and like write somewhere. Oh yeah, there's a limitation. You cannot raise humans.
Yeah.
Yeah, and of course there was another character who of occasionally took part in grave robbing.
Yes.
expeditions, and that he's a master necromancer.
Yeah. No, that's really cool. And like of all of the kind of adaptations, which is your favorite of like, people real world profession turned into something else? What's your favorite one of those from the story?
Uh, so one of the characters, I think he might be my favorite character from the book. He was a costume drag designer, uh,
And he becomes a tailor or something?
an alchemist. No, drug designer, as in he was creating drug formulas.
Yeah,
So yeah, he became an alchemist.
amazing. But no, I really like that. That sounds very cool. And so book one, does that take place of like, so actually you told me like he's on his way to Oktoberfest at the very beginning of the story. So we get to witness the kind of the assimilation kind of period and stuff like that. And is it kind of like another entity that like kind of just opens up into the world that we know, or is it that people move to a world they don't?
No, it's kind of an assimilation process where there are certain particles that enter the atmosphere, and the system. This system is introduced. Monsters are introduced because of reasons, but it's not like there are aliens or something like that. In fact, yeah, apart from the class givers, there are no aliens in the book in like 1,000 pages. I think that book one is
1,000 pages. What's that word count?
270,000, I think.
Okay, Jez, settle down.
And
Yeah, Jesus. No, that's fantastic. And I guess the other thing is like, did it start with like the Hadron Collider? Did you just go with like, what happens if we ever set it off?
no, because when I started writing it, it was very close to the James Webb Telescope launch, so I went
Yeah,
with that.
cool.
Yeah.
Okay. And what sort of stakes have you kind of put into it? So, like, what is the main character's quest? Is it kind of like a search for understanding as an academic, or is it more of like there are higher stakes at play?
It's pretty late in the book. I cannot go higher stakes. Let's say, like there is no possibility of going higher stakes. I thought of going, like looking at it in the beginning, like more of a personal journey. But then, as I was writing the story, it kind of led there because of the scope, of this guy's skills. Like when you are able to manipulate the laws of nature and
Mhm.
the four fundamental forces. I don't know. That's where the story went. So it's a multiverse.
Amazing. Okay, that's cool. That is really cool. And the other thing as well is that like not all the people that get assimilated and transformed into other entities are necessarily good people. So there'll be a lot of kind of reasons for conflict down the line, especially the strong versus the equally strong. So
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I mean, I also one of the things that I liked in I know it's a very basic thing to say, but I really loved The Walking Dead. It was one of the series that up until the last episode, like I would go to bed watching it and I would not be able to sleep until it like I was always on the edge. I know it became boring after some point, but I don't care. I liked it,
So
and one of the things that I liked was that there were like people don't change even after the apocalypse. People don't change. A lot of other but yeah. If they want to push for something, they will pursue it even if it doesn't make sense, even if it is us against them, the masters, the zombies, the whatever like strange threat is, they would just do their own shit because it's easier to keep doing that stupid thing you were doing all your life than
mhm.
adapt to the new situation.
I think Meryl is a very good example of terrifying human nature. So the one that cut off his hand to escape, and you're like, oh my god. So Daryl's brother.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
like it was so funny because I tried that show and I stopped where like the girl went missing and they couldn't find her and stuff like that. And and they were like, "What was the last thing you saw?" I was like, "Oh, they stopped at some farm and there was a barn and something, I don't know."
Oh
And they're
boy.
like, "You need to watch what happens next." I'm like, I don't know, I just wasn't feeling. And they're like, "Watch like the next episode." And I did. I was like, oh fuck, I picked the
Yeah,
worst time to stop.
yeah.
So
There are some great great scenes there. Some great, I don't know, storytelling for
yeah.
me that appeals to me.
Yeah, and like to kind of like stay on that sort of thread of things that kind of inspire you from other media types. Like I know that we, jokingly touched on the boons from Hades, but like
Mm.
what sort of kind of media like really inspires you, or you'd like to maybe somewhat emulate within your writing?
Um, I think certain phrases, certain quotes. I guess from movies mostly. Like I like creating memorable scenes, like memorable conversations, or like scenes that people might be able to visualize. Like reaching a point narratively where the reader will no doubt know where this is going, but getting up to an image that they will remember and that will create in their heads exactly how they think it would be. I don't know. I find this it's a nice exercise for writing, and I feel, at least for me, it's a good way to create some memorable moments in the book. Just like in a series or in a game, when something happens in the story that you remember it even after a lot of years. I don't know. At least this is what I'm trying to do, right?
Absolutely. And like it's great. Like there's a lot of kind of moments that kind of resonate with you in certain stories and stuff. Like even if we go with the much more recent ones of like The Witcher 3 and stuff, of like how you can get certain endings and how you can, certain things, you take kind of pride and ownership over them because they were your experiences and you were the one that kind of got to those points where Siri became a Witcher because I didn't let her go to Emir. And I was like, excellent. And then I talked to a friend who literally got the worst ending of all time. And I couldn't, like, if you had tried, it would be a challenge to fuck it up as much as he did. He killed Letho. He killed Kira Metz. He like absolutely fucked off both. He tried to play both Yennefer and Triss and got neither. He got like, so Kara Morhaime was an absolute disaster. Like everyone was died, and then he like got the gold by selling fucking Ciri to the Emperor, and he's like, that was a shit ending. I was like, what do you expect?
Brian, I didn't want to interrupt you because you seem so passionate about it, but I haven't played Witcher 3. I played
Oh
it
my
up
god.
until the point where you are doing like a side quest with a goat, and I'm like, well, why am I doing this? Like, there's
Oh
a
god.
Final Fantasy game waiting for me. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
I
Let's
like
go to yours then.
Japanese. I like Japanese RPGs more.
What's your favorite Final Fantasy, and why is it 10?
I don't know. There are, I don't know, man. I like all Final Fantasies, but like talking to you about these memorable scenes, like there is a scene in Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core where it
Mhm.
is the ending. Have you played it?
Crisis Court, only the original years ago, so I'm a bit fuzzy.
Okay, so in the ending, you remember what happens, right?
Pretty sure, yes.
Yeah. So when the violin starts playing, I was like, "Oh no!" And I was in the bus, and I was so. I mean, I'm not ashamed to cry, but not publicly, or or at the. And I think it was Final Fantasy 15, where the like the group was. It was a very sad story. Like they did not manage the whole DLC and
Yeah.
putting it all in one disc well. But during the end, I think, no, close to the end, they were around the fire, and the character was like, "I'm just tired. I don't know if I can do it." And I'm like, oh man, this is so why.
Like the for me in Final Fantasy X, the Auron, the kind of reveal that why Auron wouldn't go into the kind of the soulscape.
Why?
And
Ah, yeah,
uh,
because he.
yeah, and I
Yeah,
was like, oh God, no, I'm
yeah,
so attached. You're my favorite character. Don't leave.
um,
But yeah, there was a lot of like moments that really like gut punched me in games where I'm like, oh, I need to just take a break for a little bit.
hmm.
So yeah, memorable moments that cut out the readers' hearts and serve it to them.
Yeah.
But yeah, actually, if you go through all of the stories that you've written before, what scene are you most proud of that you think was like, ha ha ha?
Oh man, when I was writing the Apocosmos series, I mean, you know what? Skip 3 minutes if you don't want to the ending to be spoiled. So on the last book, like I had thought of this scene before I started writing it. Um, Essentially, this whole series is like. There are two stories that are happening. We see the present, where this guy, the berserker who's on the first cover, is in a ludus, like close to the nine hells, and then he tells the story of how he got there. So up to the 5 books, we go through this story until they meet on the fifth book, and we get to see that. He sacrificed himself, like he willingly went back to the hells because the bad guy had gotten his dead girlfriend from the heavens, because that's how the world works. And the thing is, they had this corgi that was that gained sapience. Yeah, I think the word is sapience, and it could talk. But when the dog first saw his owner, the main guy, the main character's girlfriend, it reverted to his dog instincts. So it fainted out of happiness, and I was writing it like that. Yeah, I mean, at least this is the most memorable for me.
Oh,
Yeah,
and
because I
so,
was waiting 5 books to write it.
oh, absolutely. But do you know, did you ever play the Fable games?
Um, Definitely the first one, maybe the second one. I'm not sure,
The
but
second one, you have a pet dog. And at the very, very end of the second book, you can either choose to sacrifice your dog and save the world, or you can save your dog and sacrifice the world.
yeah,
And
obviously
it's,
B.
well, I never got that achievement. Uh, so I was like,
Yeah,
bye.
yeah, yeah. It was
Arf,
nice
arf.
seeing your world. Yeah. How can, like, what kind of sick? I don't know if those game developers are friend of yours, but like, what the fuck? Why would you? No, don't do that.
No, no, Peter Molyneux and the kind of the people from Lionhead Studios, I wouldn't be very like a lot of them have moved on to other companies. So the Fable is currently being made by Fable 4 is being made by Playground Games that
Okay.
previously delivered the likes of Forza. So I'm like, that's going to be interesting.
Hi,
But
Lars.
yeah, hello
Yeah,
Lars.
I think I've only played Fable 1 then. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
it's
still a
the
brilliant game. But
yeah.
no. So do you play Persona then?
No, I haven't tried it. I think I tried because in general, I like to play games, all of the games in the series. I started with Persona 1, like some
Oof.
10 years ago. Yeah, I couldn't. Yeah,
Yeah.
I couldn't get into it. And from what I've seen, Persona 5, I'm not like very hyped about the graphics.
Yeah, it's there. If they kill Fable, I won't be happy. Honestly, no. Just from the what I've seen and kind of heard from it so far, everything looks pretty good.
Mm.
So I have high hopes for Fable. Yeah, if you need an in on any video games happening, just let me know. Don't hold your breath for a Vampire the Masquerade. Anyway, moving on. But yeah, so yeah, no, that's really interesting. I guess then the other stuff's like, is there, as you're kind of growing as an author, what sort of areas have you wanted to kind of like that you've maybe noticed are not shortcomings, but areas for improvement that you personally would like to address? That you've maybe, done in your current story now?
Uh, In terms of process, I'm trying to as soul crushing as it is, I'm trying to give editing another go, like self-editing and like multiple passes and stuff like that. In terms of story, I outline, which is to say that I create a skeleton of the book, and
Hmm.
then I start writing it based on that. So this doesn't mean that I'm not, when you're writing the outline, you are writing it out of your head, right? It's not like there is no let's say absolute process in doing that. So I write it on paper, then I transfer it from paper to the note, to a digital version, expanding it, and then while I write again, I expand it again. And before starting, I'm trying to see how what the characters would be,
Hmm.
and in terms of what their issues are, what kind of things they have dealt with, how it shaped them, because then I feel that connections between each other are more, I don't know, more authentic, like
Hmm.
they're more fleshed out. Because it's one thing if you have a character who is there, and it's just, I don't know, like let's say a very strong archer who is from Idaho,
Hmm.
and that's all you know about the character. And it's another thing that you know that, oh, he was, I don't know, he moved from one country to the other trying to get a degree, and then he got into some issues with the law because he was trying to do some things to pay for his tuition, and this kind of shaped him, and he didn't get his degree because of that, and he's regret, like, certain things that when you're writing the dialogue, you're going to think, oh, yeah, maybe he would react like this because he feels like he hasn't completed anything in his life, and he's always starting new things and he's never finishing anything. So he's overcompensating. So I like to make my stories character driven, and I think what I would like to work more is maybe have like a more overarching theme. Like I think some books, some series, let's say, have a theme of the older generation passing on to the new generation, where I don't know, like the old generation of kings is dying, and now their sons and daughters need to pick up
Hmm.
the pieces of an old war or something like that. Yeah, so this is something that I'm trying to improve, let's say. Not that there isn't a theme, but I like to make a bigger point of it,
Hmm.
like on every, let's say, end of the book, that, yeah, this is how it happened, this is where the story is going.
Excellent. So from that, like, I really agree with the kind of the characterization of people. So I imagine you write in third person then, because to write side characters and give them depth, that's going to be impossible in first person.
Yeah, I try to do it. So in the Apocalypse, it was first person, and like I tried to do that. I don't know how well. I think that it went well, but there is a lot of sitting around the fire and telling our backstory.
Yeah.
I was a king, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened, because it's so much harder to get like to feel like you are connected with a character if you
Hmm.
don't know the whole story, if they're just dropping hints. And like if there is a person who lost his son and he blames himself about it, you like that character like would not drop a hint organically. He would not
Yeah.
say, oh yeah, this reminds me of the day that I lost my son. Like nobody would say that naturally.
No.
You need to bring them to a vulnerable state where they want to share that. So it needs to be a lot of
Yeah.
tell. Yeah.
There's I'll give you an example of something that you'll actually quite enjoy. So within Baldur's Gate 3, there was a thing of like there's certain instances of like, it's emergent narrative. There's all these kind of like storylines and everything that happens. But our CEO gave an interview, Sven Vinke, he gave an interview of one of the things that has to happen because there is an object or an artifact or something like that that kind of is integral to the storyline. But the person that gives you that, you can like, and because they have all these edge cases, which is like, what would happen if a player did this? What would happen if a player did that? And if you saw, like, there was one like quest thing, and there was only 4 lines of dialogue, but there were 700 nodes attached to those 4 lines of dialogue because of previous actions that the player could have taken.
Yeah.
So some of my friends that are the writers that have hired for it and stuff like that, they're explaining all this to me, and I think it's amazing. But there's one of the things is like there's this person that has the artifact, but you can cheese it and you can literally avoid them the whole way through the game, and you can like literally just like every time you see them you're like nope and just all of this. So you're getting to that whole point. So where you were talking about the whole characters, you need to bring them to that vulnerable thing for it to make sense. Sven was saying that he hates it, but it was a necessary evil of there was one instance where if you don't interact with that character at any point during a certain instance or a battle or something like that, they just kind of like jump in and being like, by the way, you didn't fucking talk to me at any point in time. Like, I really wanted to have a conversation with you about this. And he's like, it's kind of like,
Yeah.
here you go. And he said like it's the only way they could figure out how to do it, by making it an integral thing to the plot. So I thought you'd enjoy that.
Man, listening to this kind of like story like branching narrative design, it sounds like a nightmare to me. I tried before writing games. Would you believe that I was trying to enter the gaming industry, and I was I mean, it didn't go well. So I was trying to create like a game with the intention to kickstart it and all that, and it was on Unity. I think I was using like the fungus plugin. Anyway, it's like a
2D,
and with branching narrative and using the, I think, the 3.5 edition system. And I mean, I know that like for all developers or like game developers, or so at least solo ones, or I guess even people who write books, or all creatives, you massively underestimate your first project, like how much time it would take. And like I was on it for like a year, on top of studying and working, and I made like the intro because of the branching narrative, because they would go here and here, all these flow charts. Oh man, that's such a nightmare. Nightmare.
The first thing I would suggest in this instance, just for your own curiosity, is a free program called Twine. So Twine is your friend. No,
I'm not touching game design, game development ever again. No. I'm very happy writing books. No.
Okay,
This is
that's
I
totally
leave
fine.
this for braver people.
Okay, no problem at all. I was just going to say that if you wanted me to give you the test and I'll put it in front of the writers, just could make it happen to me.
I admire those people, and I would not like to become one of those people, because I think I would lose my mind.
You absolutely would. So one of the things that I absolutely love is that literally every single one of them is like, I'm shit. So all of them, like it's literally the same imposter syndrome that exists everywhere else. There's nobody that's at the upper echelons. Like my first time going there, I met one of the narrative designers, and he's just like, Lawrence Schick, who wrote Advanced Dungeons and Dragons with Gary Gygax and invented the term XP. And I'm like, and is that all you did, Lawrence? Is that when you peaked? And he just turns around and is like, oh yeah, I currently, do adaptations of Alexandre Dumas's, works. And then I was like, oh my God. And he was like, I was also the lore master of the Elder Scrolls Online for 10 years. I'm like, okay, you're just the most awesome person. But yeah, no, look, sorry, it's just it's being able to kind of capture those narrative beats and stuff like that within a story without them being contrived. It's a very, very difficult thing, because a lot of the time when we need the certain character kind of move in a certain position or place, we just have another like person with a name saying the prompt to make the move in the right direction. And it's giving that person the background of Idaho Archer, you know, and I immediately just think of like, did he just practice shooting potatoes? Like, you know, what? Like, what was it in Idaho he did? So.
Yeah. I think that's also, I mean, you can use that also to your advantage. Like when someone comes in the scene who is part of the, I don't know, of the guild, let's say, but you don't want the spotlight of, or like the attention of the reader to go there. Like you just don't name them. Oh, hey, what's up? And you don't introduce them. They say their piece. Like, I don't know, like you would not pay attention to someone who brings you the beer in a story, because if they're not relevant to the story, right? Unless of course they die horribly because a master lands right on top of them, then you would say, oh yeah, I'm getting married tomorrow actually, or something like that, something cheesy like that, you know.
I think one of the nicest moments is like, and I'm not a fan of the story overall, but everybody loves large chests. That first chapter was fantastic. Have you ever read it?
I'm sorry, no.
No, don't. It's fine. Like a lot of people enjoy it. It's just not my kind of thing. I read the kind of raw, unadulterated version that wasn't yet kind of like polished or refined and toned down in certain aspects. But the first chapter introduces an adventurer, you know, and he's described in detail and all of this sort of stuff, and goes through this adventuring dungeon and stuff. And he, you know, goes up to a chest to get the loot at the end of chapter 1, and it was a mimic, and it eats him. And the main character of the story is the mimic, not the adventurer.
Okay, that's a nice, you know.
Yeah, subversion.
Yeah.
But like that's one of the few times that I've really enjoyed it, because you always know, like when someone's been being described in detail, you're like, this is going to be someone sticking around for a while. And then when the author just kills them off immediately, you're like, oh, I know what I'm dealing with now.
Yeah,
No one is safe.
It was kind of like that with Game of Thrones, and because I was not aware of Sean Bean is the name of the actor, yeah, of the memes, and like. And I wasn't familiar with the work because I think I watched the first season and then I read the books back to back, and that I saw that he was beheaded, and I was like, "What the fuck?" I thought these were the good guys, like the main guy, because you know I came from a perspective of these are the good guys, these are the bad guys, these are other guys, and I was like, "Wow, man, this is a weird one." Which is, you know, this was just me being inexperienced to that kind of stories.
I might be wrong in this, but Deep Blue Sea, I think it might have been, where Samuel L. Jackson is like shouting, "It's like, we're not going to be taken down by this goddamn," and before he finishes it, like the creature just comes up and like kills him instantly, and you're like, I thought he was like plot armor because he's Samuel L. Jackson. And like that was one of the stipulations he made in it, being like, I just want to be cut out really quickly. And like you go in thinking like, oh, star power, like this person isn't going to be able to do it. Like, you know, no one will die.
Now I know these things, yeah. But I was like TJ, I was young and innocent at that time.
Yeah.
Brian, you know, I thought I would surprise you with something. I have a question for you.
Oh no.
Now that I said that I was young and innocent, did you ever have an experience where like you understood that, oh, am I old? So I will give you. I'll give you some time to think about it. I will tell you mine. I was at a burger place like I think 4 or 5 years ago, and I think it was a Dr. Dre song. Da-na-na-na-na, this one, and there were some kids, women, ladies, I don't know, and they Shazammed the song because they didn't know it, and I'm like, fuck, like they don't know the song, so I'm really old.
So I was camping a year ago with friends. So a girl from South Africa, and her son was there, and he was playing a Nintendo Switch, and I was, they're like, obviously you're trying to like, connect to the games. It's like, yeah, and the mother's like, oh, Brian works in the video games industry, and I'm like, I'm also a gamer, so like, stuff like this. And he's like, oh, do you want to have a go? And I'm like, yeah, I'm great with games and stuff like this. And it was a Mario platformer thing, and there was no intuitive thing. I couldn't figure out how to play it properly. And he just looked at me and was like, you could see that he's like, ugh. Like,
Yeah.
and I looked at this and it crushed me, because I was like, I'm shit. Like, do you know the way, like, if you like, I'm a Android user. If I'm handed an iPhone, I'm like, the fuck am I doing? And then I actually emulate my parents. Like when they see technology, I'm like, what the fuck is this? How do I go back and stuff? And you're like, no. I'm young, I'm hip, I know things.
Yeah. I can jump around and stuff like that. Yeah, I had the exact like almost same situation. The son of a friend of mine, I think that was like 7 years ago. We were playing like this memory game where you put down, I don't know, like 20 cards, and you need to find the pairs, right? And like the first time I let the guy beat me, he was like 5, 6 years old. And then like I tried my best for the next 3 times, and he beat me like I was not even close to winning. And I'm like, God damn it!
I hope he
Why?
just kind of like turned around and was like, Santa's not real,
I hope no. I hope he was. I hope he becomes like I don't know, like a genius or something, so that I can look back to this and say,
I hope
okay.
he achieves absolutely nothing in life, so you're like, God, I lost to that guy.
No.
But no, it's like there's been so many kind of sobering moments where like I've realized that I'm getting older, and it's just my body saying no. It's kind of like, standing up too fast, and then you're dizzy, and you're like, what is this?
I think I'm kind of more okay with the body, because it's like it's part of, I mean, everything is part of growing up, even the mind thing. But I think the mind thing for me is like harder to accept. Oh man, you're forgetting things, or like the worst thing, like mentioning the same story to someone twice, and they're like, oh yeah, you told me. Fuck, why am I my grandpa suddenly?
Oh, like have you had that where you've written like chapters and stuff of a story that you were like, you thought was an idea, or you've just found stories that you have no recollection of, and you're like,
oh
yeah. Like, so that I'm kind of like, oh, that's weird. Or I was putting off as like, oh God, wild cards, I need to plot out the rest of book 2. Then I open up the file and the whole thing's plotted out. I'm like, oh, and I'm like, this is good. And I was reading it like for the first time. I'm like, did I do this? Well, obviously, but it's
this is such a weird experience. Like, I remember writing the book, and because when you're in the middle of the book, you're like, oh, I'm shit. Like, oh man, I'm not doing well. And then you read it again. I'm like, oh, okay. And like, I'm kind of cool. Like, this is nice.
So I've actually still been in that stage of where people say like, thank you, younger Brian. Sure thing, older Brian. That is actually one of my so I was very much a serial procrastinator and stuff, and I said to myself, you know what, I'm going to give future Brian a break. I constantly belittled past Brian, being like, oh, you piece of shit, why haven't you done anything? And I was like, you know what, future Brian is going to look back on me right now and be like, well done, thank you for that. So I actually did a lot of the stuff, and I worked ahead of schedule. And then when I was later on, I was like, looking back, I was like, so this is how it feels. It's like, I feel accomplished. And then I was like, that was a good experiment, never doing that again. And now I live in existential dread.
Can you stop though? Like when you start working, because I'm having this conversation, like I like discussing about these kind of things and how we approach work and life and all that. Can you stop? Like when you are working, can you stop? I know it's not a thing that you master, and it's like that. Like it's a constant struggle. But how are you dealing with? You can get out of the. You can close the laptop, your PC, but can you stop your brain from working?
No. So the thing is that yes and no. So one of the things is that there's the whole mantra of just sit down, put out words, and eventually they'll be good. And I find that to be very painful because I did that and I wrote in the wrong direction. And I wrote continuously in the wrong direction, pushing myself to have a word count every day and to do it. And it only took when I was at around 35,000 words that I looked at it and I was like, I don't like this story right now.
Mm,
Why? And I had to go back to 16,000 words. And I was like, that was the last point I was happy.
mm,
And then it's a case of, right, do we repurpose these following chapters, the other 17,000 or something, or do we scrap them and let them go? And
mm,
it's a big thing to kind of let go of that. And it's like, can they be repurposed at all? And a lot of them, yes, was the answer, but I needed to understand why it was the wrong direction. And it was coming off the high of book one, where we had like the kind of race to the finish line of book one was kind of like, tempo, 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 tempo.
mm,
And then for the start of book two, I went tempo, 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 tempo. And I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. This is not fitting at
mm,
all. As in, like, we are suddenly racing at a point where we shouldn't be. And it needs to kind of go back to like a little bit of the lull period and stuff like that to kind of catch your breath and, kind of work towards the plot of book two a bit more and then go back into the
mm.
ramping.
I
So
see.
so for me, when I get into the groove, like Quest Academy, when I wrote, I was writing it as a escape from wildcards because I was miserable with wildcards at the time. Yes, not letting the reader decompress. So with wildcards, I wanted a palette cleanser, which was like, I'm just going to write a chapter or two of something creative so I don't feel like crippled by the expectations. Because there was 3,200 followers on Royal Road asking, where's the next chapter? There
Mm,
was 120, 150 patrons being like, where's the next chapter? And I felt like I owed everyone chapters and it was work rather than fun. And I know that writing is work, but it doesn't always have to be. It should be like, striking the balance between enjoying what you're doing. Otherwise there's no point. But with this palette cleanser, I started writing Quest Academy. And with wildcards, I was writing maybe 2,500 words, 3,000 words a week, being like, okay, one chapter a week.
mm,
That's grand. That'll keep them, happy and stuff like that. With Quest Academy, I thought my maximum was something like 10,000 words a month because of wildcards. And I
yeah.
wrote 50,000 words in 1 week because I was having so much fun that I was averaging about 10,000 to 12,500 a day.
Yeah.
And that scared the shit out of me because I was like, is this what it's supposed to be?
Yeah, I think we're always changing in terms of what works. Like what works now might not work in 2 years. What makes us happy now might not make us happy like in 4 years. Like, and I feel it's important to understand that we change, and like it's not a bad thing to change what you like. But in general, are you able to like turn off your mind from work, be that writing or like promoting or like formatting or whatever, like after, I don't know, 5 p.m., 7 p.m., or whatever?
So I'm in the difficult situation where I'm still working full time.
Mm-hmm.
So I am working in a day job, maybe like, 9 to 5 or 9 to 6. So I will be like on a few days of the week, I have to get up at 7 a.m. and then I'm back home at 8 p.m. And then it's a case of like, you should probably do some writing where
Mm.
you are physically and mentally exhausted after the day. And then you feel guilt. And then that goes on for a few days.
Brian,
Yeah.
you just take care of yourself. Don't, like, guilt is the worst.
Oh, it's like it's one of those things where it's like, that you want to kind of see it through. You want to be
Yeah.
able to make it your full-time thing, and just kind of going through the motions isn't going to do it. So it's kind of like working two jobs essentially.
Oh,
And then
absolutely it is. Yeah.
and working on the weekends and stuff, and people are like, "Oh, you should relax, you should decompress." And all your friends that work Monday to Friday, the only times that they have free are the weekends, which are your only times to write. So
Yeah.
you're like, "Oh." So when it comes to am I able to switch off? Yes, but it's very hard for me to switch back on. But
Oh,
when I'm in the mode, when I'm in the zone, it is near impossible to rip me out of it. because I will go endlessly. I will just go chapter, chapter, chapter. And I've in one sitting, I could do 7,500 words in, maybe 5 or 6 hours and be like, okay, this is good. And they're kind of like clean drafts as well. Because I write like Jez might disagree, but they're quite clean.
Mm.
And hopefully that answers it a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I like having these conversations because it always gives like we don't have, like I told you, I don't have like a weekly call with other creatives that do these kinds of things, and like my circles in Berlin are quite limited, and the creatives that I work with are creatives in like musicians or like artists, painters, and stuff like that. So there is some kind of overlap of how we approach, the creative life and like work-life balance, but it's different. Like you don't often get to talk. I don't often get to talk with other authors who understand like how it is and what it takes to stay productive, but also sane.
So one of the things is that like these sort of conversations are good for the soul. And it's really, really nice to be able to kind of take a step back and like just refill the kind of creative well. And sometimes I was like, why would you put him on your spam list? Oh, to hit up more often. Okay. It's like send to spam, ignore Dimi. He's emotionally vulnerable. Fuck that guy. Not the liver. But yeah, no, it's like I was having a chat yesterday. I was having a chat with Michael Head, and we were just like, chatting about stuff. And I was saying, like, it'll just be 20 minutes, 30 minutes. We spoke for 6 hours,
Oh
just
boy.
talking about stories, just talking about ideas, talking about things like that, and just like bouncing ideas off each other. And it was so much fun when you just have someone that gets it and that understands your kind of vibe, your tempo, and stuff like that. It's just so nice just being able to kind of like have that. And I came out of that sitting back and thinking about like of all the stuff we talked about, like how it would impact my stories, about how certain things could work, and I was excited to write. And it was just a lot of the stuff where you're thinking, oh, I should be ideating, I should be brainstorming the next sort of stuff. I started thinking of whole new concepts just because of our conversation, and that is wonderful. And you
Yeah.
don't get that if you're just like in an echo chamber or you're just kind of keeping it all down when talking to your other friends.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard, and that's one of the reasons why I like to go to like author conventions. I mean, author conventions that have lit RPG authors at least, because you speak with people who understand, and it's one thing to speak with readers, and another to speak with someone who creates things and knows what I don't know what kind of effort goes into creating stories. Uh, we should set up like a monthly meeting, Brian,
Absolutely. I'll
in
happily
person.
do that with you.
In
In
person,
person.
yeah.
Yeah, you just need to come to Ireland. We're convincing everyone to come to Ireland. It's great fun.
Every time. Okay, yeah.
But yeah, no, like I'll go to Germany. Germany's fun. But I need to be, when I'm full-time writing, then I'll have a lot like less holidays that I need to be working on. As in like, so like I think I have 20 days to take or something.
Yeah,
So
I recently had like a small practice run on this because I worked for a company. I mean, I still work for a company as an analyst, and I can, let's say, stop, but it's anyway. It's a transitional period for the company, and I'm kind of needed, so I reduced my time to 2 days per week. But I had, because of the end of the financial year in end of March, I had to take my holidays, and it was um, 14 and 16 days of holidays. So 2 days, 2 working days per week out of 18 holidays. So anyway, I was sitting for 2 months, and I was,
yeah.
I was waking up, I was playing author. I was waking up, I would go to the gym, I would write and stuff like that. And it's so nice. Like I was coming back from the, because now I'm trying to write in cafes, and I was smiling, and I'm like, I'm done for the day. Like maybe will format a book, maybe I will just play Hades the whole day.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's like that sounds absolutely wonderful because, and it's not a thing wrong with the company or anything like that. Wait, Chatfield is seeing Jimmy next week.
yeah, we'll be seeing each other in Spain and the Netherlands.
So I was about to say like, oh, you dickhead, and then I was like, oh wait, I'm seeing Chatfield in 2 weeks. So, so
Good for
I'm
you.
going to Lake Garda
Ah,
with
nice,
Chatfield. So
nice.
yeah, that'll be
Yeah,
nice.
yeah. I'm afraid it won't be possible for me because my girlfriend and I booked a lot of holidays this year, and we have two weddings to attend.
Yeah.
Maybe
He already
next year.
broke the hard news to me because I was like, is Demi going? And he was like, no.
Yeah,
And I was like, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Sorry.
That's
Maybe next year. Maybe we organize something ourselves in beautiful Ireland, or
yeah,
somewhere where it's sunny.
yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Maybe in Greece. You know,
Oh my God. I've never been to Greece before and I would absolutely love to go.
it's great for
Um,
holidays.
yeah. It's like, so I was wondering, this is interesting because, you know, the way like there's certain, like Greek has the most amazing mythology and, you know, kind of history and like culture and things like that. Um, are there any kind of assumptions of Greece that really irritate you or something like that? Because you know the way like a lot of people are like, oh, where are the leprechauns in Ireland? I'm like, motherfucker. And so like, what's the kind of Greek equivalent?
um, I don't know if there's something like bad. I don't know. I've never heard of some like what would be
So I
something.
think I think the sort of things would be like almost naming conventions where someone will take, oh, this is a cool Greek word. I'll put
Yeah.
that in, and you're like, oh no, not that context.
Ah,
So
no, I mean it's nice to see people, toying with
yeah,
that. And I'm not like one who would say, "Oh no, actually, this is not what happened," because it's all stories, right? Like
yeah.
you can retell the story however you want. And mythology, I guess I have like a kind of a special relationship with mythology and history because in Greece there is a big connection between people who enjoy history and mythology and take pride that they are descendants of that kind of history, and people who are leaning very far to the right side of things and who think that, oh yeah, when we were teaching philosophy, other people were climbing from one tree to the other. And like growing up with like hearing these things made me kind of disinterested in history, or like,
Mhm.
because history buffs were fascists in many, many, many occasions, and this kind of ruined it for me. I'm trying to, rediscover uh, history and mythology, but you know, it's kind of spoiled on me.
The Stephen Fry, his audiobook on Mythos is
Mhm.
one of my favorite things because it's him. He wrote the book, and it's him giving like a storytelling rendition of, you know, the gods and the history of everything. So you have Aphrodite of like from the foam, and like
Mm.
all of these things and everything that's happening, and like it's just really really cool. Of like, you know, Hades and oh god, it's who's the water god? It's not
Poseidon.
Poseidon. Poseidon. But they were like, you know, who is going to get hell, and like both of them being like, you know, it doesn't matter which one of like, you know, what I get. I just
Mm.
want to make sure the other one knows that I won. So it's just like, yes, I got it. Like it's all this petty stuff and like Artemis like loving the moon and not liking boys. It's just really cool.
Mm. I
Um,
tried writing a story like that, but it was like I tried my hand in harem lit RPG, which
ah,
I did not enjoy it. I did it purely for because it was the thing to do at that time, and it was a story of Zeus and how he was essentially it was a retelling of him fighting with his father Kronos,
mhm, yeah.
and it was a nice story. Like he was the god who was irresponsible, and he did not want anything to do with dealing with things. But then
Mhm.
he escaped his father while his father ate his siblings, and
Yeah.
he needed to um, create an army to, I don't know, to get to avenge his father, like his father avenged his father, because Cronus did the same thing to his father, Uranus, I think. Anyway, it was a nice story, but yeah, it was.
I'd highly recommend Lore Olympus by Rachel Smythe. It's a really, really cute retelling of kind of Hades and Persephone.
How
Um,
how did you say it?
so Lore Olympus,
Okay.
and it's a free web comic, and it's really, really good. And it kind of just goes through the kind of pantheon and stuff like that, and it's really, really heartwarming and nice,
Mm.
and just kind of seeing how they all are. But yeah, it's a very, very good one. And I really like that story.
There was also the Iron Druid, where they had I don't know if you've read this series. It's like it's in modern day. It's urban fantasy, and the Iron Druid gets involved with first with Irish pantheon, and then the Roman pantheon, the Greek pantheon, and Zeus was essentially going around with like a permanent boner. It was a great, I don't know,
Yeah.
retelling of how the story of the gods are.
So I did tell you that I was chatting to the voice of Ares in Hades, didn't I?
Mm.
He is just one of the coolest guys. He did the voice like when we were chatting, and I was like, this is the coolest thing ever.
Mm.
So,
Yeah.
but it's like the even in Lore Olympus, one of my absolute favorite characters is Hera. She is fierce. It's just incredible. But yeah, like I'd highly recommend it. So Zeus was Quagmire. No, he was successful. Like, like, like
You get it.
yeah, he turned himself into a fly, and he's just like, I'm gonna go in there and we're gonna bang.
Yeah, man, there are so many stories. Like, how would like what were they think? I know that they were drinking a lot of wine, like when making up these stories, but I don't know. I guess storytelling is
Yeah.
like a thing through the ages.
But the bees creating ambrosia, the honey being the nectar of the gods and stuff like that.
Mm.
And just like, and the bee asking, like, I would like to, be able to defend myself and stuff like this, and the stinger being created. And like you're like, this is awesome. Like I love this.
Yeah.
And that's the Stephen Fry version of like the mythos and stuff like that. And he also did Heroes, which goes on to the likes of Achilles and all of them. And it's just super cool. Really, really enjoyed them. But yeah, so God, where were we? Sorry, does anyone have questions? I don't think any questions have really come in from the comments or something like that.
I
But
can
yeah,
ask you a question. I have more interview questions if you want, Brian.
of course, yeah. What
Well,
would you
so,
like to know?
so Brian, what's the favorite thing about yourself?
My favorite thing about myself. Why are you like this, Jimmy? Um,
Do you see how people feel when they come on this show, Brian? Asking them questions and all?
yeah, I do now, but like I'm rarely the one interviewed. So okay, be positive, Brian. What do I like about myself?
Yes, of course. Of course, you need to be positive, Brian.
Yeah. So when I was younger, I had a little bit of a difficulty speaking when I was younger. And I used to have a lot of kind of fear around talking to people, and just kind of like communicating. So my father sat down with me, and because like one of my biggest nightmares was in class when I was a child, we had to read essays out to our classmates, and I was terrified of this because of the kind of the speech impediment of sorts. So I was like terrified of this. So my father sat down with me, and he decided we were going to write funny stories, and I was having so much fun reading those stories that I completely forgot about my fear because I just couldn't wait to get to the next part. And I didn't care if they were laughing, but usually they were and stuff like this. And it completely got over my fear of things. And when I look back at that, because when people meet me, they're like, "You're such an incredible communicator," or that your voice is incredible. And when I used to do like presentations and stuff, I did marketing degree, and everyone's like, "Oh, if you have Brian on your team, like you're surefire for the presentation." Um, and it's just so funny to me because even when people say all these things, they're saying, "Oh, I love your voice," I constantly think back to that point
Mm,
where I wasn't, and how writing kind of brought me to where I am now. And that the stories just never stop, because even after we stopped doing those essays, I continued to write funny stories, and I continued to write stories that I enjoyed. And it was a magical escapism for me. So one of the things I like is that I never lost that, and that I kind of converted a weakness into a strength, which sounds like a wanky recruiter thing to say,
no,
but it's
yeah.
a
And so I think in general there are certain things that are bad or hard growing up, or in whatever situation, that make us excel in things. And I
Mhm.
guess, like, would you say that because you had this difficulty growing up, you excelled in this thing eventually?
May- maybe
Like,
so.
if you were fine, do you think you would have excelled in it?
I think that I probably would have been more confident growing up, which would have meant that I wouldn't have needed the escapism of writing.
Mm,
So that I more than likely would have found myself more willing to kind of jump into other things, which might have put that kind of hobby to one side. So I don't know that I would still love writing as much if I had kind of taken on other things, made more friends, or did more sports or things like that
mm,
when I was younger. But it's hard to know, really. Um, I kind of like I've really one thing I do like about myself is kind of my personal growth over the last number of years, because I have matured leaps and bounds over where I was years ago. Like even kind of like financial maturity, just kind of like understanding my own barriers and limits of where, like, I don't want to be in certain relationships. I want to, like, respecting myself more, because those were things that I didn't learn when I was younger. And I
yeah,
kind of was like, well, I deserve this, or like, this is the best I'll be. And, I should just be happy with it because a lot of people have worse.
mm,
And now it's a case of like, no, I don't want to compromise on things. And I will continue to be like, having high standards for everything. And I like that. But it's a challenge at times. But sorry, that's a very deep
no, I think
answer.
this is a very this is a very positive outlook, and I think that it's not like a skill that you unlock and it exists. It's just a thing that you have to, like, constantly work on, and constantly remind yourself that uh, it is what it is. I will do my best. I will put my limits, or I will not. I don't know, subscribe to this kind of behavior and stuff like that. It's not something that you learn and that's it.
And one of the things that kind of really opened my eyes is that how, like, once you're open to being wrong, once you're open to being vulnerable, and once you're open to kind of like pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone, it opens up so much more of the world. And like, there's still learning opportunities for me. Like, for example, when I went to conventions, I didn't shy away from talking to people.
Oh no, you
Um,
didn't, Brian.
so it was, if I see
How was
someone
that?
that, yeah, so it's, if I like someone, I'll be like, let's talk, let's do stuff, let's like this and that. Like, but you have the crowning moment of being my first hug in Vegas.
Your
So
yeah.
yeah, yeah. So
Oh,
when we met outside the restaurant,
yeah.
and like the Irish office, like, who's this guy?
I was so happy, yeah, yeah, because
Yeah, me too.
my girlfriend was like, "Where do you know this guy?" Oh, yeah, I met this guy in Madrid, and all that. It was, yeah, it
Yeah,
was so nice to uh, see like a familiar face in the other side of the ocean.
yeah. It removed a lot of like not insecurity, but kind of like, oh God, like, am I going to know anyone? Will I be able to talk to people? Is this just going to be like 2,000 Americans that are all
Mm,
like high profile authors?
Mm.
And then I just see like, Dimmy,
Yeah.
and I'm like, you're a friend.
Yeah, it was a
So
nice moment. Yeah, I really
yeah,
enjoyed that. It made my day, like in terms of what I was doing there. And yeah.
yeah. But one of the things that happened in Vegas was that like I had signed up to do the Dungeons and Dragons with Luke Gygax.
Mm,
And I did that, and I was like so nervous because like, oh my God, this is the son of Gary Gygax, like the inventor of D&D, and I'm shit at D&D. And I just said to myself, have fun, just have fun,
yeah.
because like this is a once in a lifetime opportunity, and everyone around me was like not serious, like serious, but like they knew their ins and outs. And I was like, hi, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm just here to have fun. So
Mm,
like, if I'm doing anything wrong, just let me know, or if I need to do something differently, just let me know.
mm.
And I got a prize at the end for being the most fun.
Of
Uh,
course.
and and then I got invited to the next thing, even though I didn't have a booking or anything like that. I was saying like, oh yeah, where do I send the money? They're like, no, 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 don't worry about it. Just come. We want you there.
I'm so
And
jealous, Brian.
it was just such a lovely experience.
Yeah.
So that happened, and then I was like, and I got to drink with them and stuff like that. But then other people like were coming up to me, being like, hey, like, would you like to go to this event next year? We'll look after expenses and flights and stuff like that. I was like, what is happening? Like, as in, I've only had a couple of conversations with you, and it's just kind of opened my eyes that you have like this wonderful community of just people that are just good, just inherently good,
Yeah.
and that like they just want to be surrounded by people they like, or that it's just a nice thing.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I think it's. I've been thinking about this a lot recently. How it is. Because we are, let's say, we are all authors. We are all in the publishing thing, regardless of the genre, and many of us will stay for a long period of time, right? And we will be able to remember that, how it was when we first met Brian, or what Brian
Yeah.
did like the third time we saw him. And if Brian was being, let's say Brian is a big author of we've have
Mhm.
lucked out with her. Yeah. So, oh yeah. So let's say Chatfield. If I meet Chatfield, and Chatfield is a large gatekeeper of the genre,
Mhm.
he won't stop me from writing. Eventually, I will sell more books. I will get my own audience. I will do things, and I will still won't like him. If Chatfield is as he is right now, and he's a cool dude, and he, when he thinks of something that I might be able to help, or that might be able to help me, he will send me a message. This is a good thing. This is how you make friends, and this is how,
Mhm.
let's say, if, I don't know, I have a connection in Berlin that wants a great little RPG sci-fi author to
Mhm.
speak. I will ask him because he's a great guy. I will not ask someone who was a gatekeeper, who was an asshole. So I guess what I what my thinking boils down to is, if you are good and if you approach people with the best intentions, and I don't know, like being honest and trying to see the good in them, and how
Mhm.
you might be able to create friendships, because what we're doing is kind of like a solitary profession.
Mhm.
uh Good things, more good things come than if you're seeing them with a suspicious eye.
Absolutely. And that the other thing as well is that we're conditioned a lot of the time to think someone has ulterior motives, because that's just the sort of society that we kind of have. And like, I've also like working in recruitment for so long, like everyone lies. Like
Yeah.
everyone lies. Even just like for their own self-interests and stuff. And that's totally like they're looking after themselves, which is completely understandable and fine. But when you come to a community and you're like, why does this person want to talk to me? I'm a nobody. Or that I'm only, on Royal Road. Why would so and so want to spend time with me? What could they possibly get from this? And that's the complete wrong attitude, because
Mm.
it's just like, no, this is enthusiasts of a genre hanging out with each other. And if they want to, take people on the ride with them or make their journey that little bit easier, that's completely up to them. Which I think is a wonderful thing. Like, for example, when I was in Vegas, I was outside in the smoking area, and I met a guy, and he just like he was looking over at me a few times and stuff like that, and like eventually built up the courage to be like, like, I see you're in lit RPG, and I was saying like, oh yeah, no, well, barely, but yeah, try him. And I said, well, what about yourself? He's like, I'm 40,000 words into my first manuscript. And I was like, oh, good for you. Like, stuff like this. He's saying like, yeah. I was saying like, have you talked to many people? And he's like, no. It's, just here and stuff like that. I was like, oh, who's your favorite author? And he's like, oh, Matt Dinniman. I was like, cool, follow me. And
it's so nice.
And so I just went, no, like it's me. So something's going to happen. So I went straight up to Matt Dinniman. I was like, Matt, this guy fucking hates you. He thinks that your stuff is a piece of shit. And and your man was like, oh God, no, I'm your biggest fan and stuff. And Matt was just immediately just like, he's like, cool, nice to meet you, Matt. Like, and it was so nice. And like, just kind of bounced around with him, and then he was talking to another guy, and he was like pointing at me, like out in the smoking area another day, and he's just like, yeah, that's the guy. And so I was like, who's your favorite author? Let's go. And like, and this guy was saying like he'd really love to play D&D and stuff like that. It would be super awesome, and he's just like a huge fan, and he'd like all of this sort of stuff. And I was saying to Luke, I was saying like, by the way, this guy absolutely hero worships you, and he got into the second game. And it was just like lots of little things where if you don't ask,
Brian,
you don't get. But you know
no,
what I mean?
Brian, you I think you are kind of downplaying what like the two examples here, because in one example you introduced an author, no, a person who was writing his first book to his favorite lit RPG author, and in the second example, you brought someone to a table to play D&D with the son of the creator of D&D. So those are not little things; those are great things.
But like, it's
for maybe you want to downplay it, but for those people, I'm sure that they will remember. Oh, Brian, like I would give my right hand for Brian.
But again, like, and it's just that the community of people makes those sort of things possible and easy. Is the way to make it easier than, and like all it is like, what do you have to lose?
Yeah.
Realistically. And that's it. It's like meet your hero, and like if Matt turned around and be like, I don't have time for this, then you'd be like, oh, okay. Or if they said like there's no room on the table, it's like, well, at least we asked and found out. That's it.
Yeah, one thing that I kind of regret, but at the same time it's impossible to do, is like when I'm seeing posts by let's say newer authors or things that I know the answer for, and I start writing a response, and then I can see that in order to flesh out a correct response that is well-rounded, and it's like I make it clear that it is my opinion and this is how I approach it, and like it becomes a very big thing, and it's not possible to maintain it. So I think it's a lot easier to approach authors and speak with them instead of trying, because in a public forum, when you reply to something, it is very difficult to give a rounded opinion that holds on from every angle. I think it's a good thing to approach other authors. No, it's like I know how to do it, but it will be like 20 minutes that I would have been writing, not that I should have been writing, or formatting or whatever.
But there's instances on like all of those kind of groups and stuff where I'm like, I know the answer and I can give them the answer, but like there's a little like magnifying glass up in the top corner with a search function where this question has been answered 1,000 times, and I don't want to reward your laziness. Like, as in, that's one of the instances. It's kind of like it's up there with it. Sorry if this is against the rules, or like you can delete this if it's against the rules. I'm like, bitch, look at the rules. Like, sorry, I'm that person. I'm like, ugh.
I understand what you mean. I try to more recently, let's say, I try to look at people with the best kind of like, oh no, they have the best intentions. Like there is no malice behind what they're saying, but still, it takes time, and I don't know. Yeah, that's one thing.
But like, there's a lot of instances where, for example, I see a lot of the time there are sometimes vocal minorities in certain groups that will have an opinion that they state as law, and I
Yeah,
don't like that. So, for example, a lot of people that were maybe chewed out by the Royal Road community at the very beginning of their careers, kind of like when people say, "Oh yeah, I'm thinking about doing Royal Road," and people are like, "Nah, no, no, no," as in like, be careful. And it's fear mongering and
hmm
setting someone up for failure. Be like, "Oh no, don't even bother with that. Just go straight to Amazon." And you're like, "No," as in like people can build their entire platform on Royal Road if they so choose. And it's a case of like, you can absolutely go the route of kill it with kindness and be open to feedback. Whereas a
yeah,
lot of people are just kind of like, no, this is my story. You like it or you don't. And by the way, this is just for exposure. And I'm going to Amazon. And
yeah.
the readers know that. So sometimes I just don't bother with the Royal Road posts. I'm like, search my name, and you'll see my kind of story and stuff on it. And that's through a lens of when it was the trending list before it was the rising stars. And it might be outdated kind of experience. And they're like, oh, well, you hit the top 10, back when it was easier to do. And there was only 40,000 stories and now there's 50,000 stories. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's always like that, and it's always hard to give advice based on like I cannot take advice from um, I don't know, from an author who started their writing Lit RPG 7 years ago, because it was a different thing. But I think that the best approach would be to take in the advice and filter it through what would be useful for you in terms of the current circumstances. Now, for those people who are like, oh no, don't do this, don't do that, like what I say is correct, I think you cannot help the people who listen to this advice, because first they need to build their own confidence and their own skills in, okay, who is this person? Why is he saying that? And is he just an old grumpy dude who, back in my time we used to do
Yeah.
it like, yeah, because that exists everywhere, right? You
Mhm.
want to become, I don't know, you want to become a tattoo artist, they will give you to clean toilets for 2 years before you touch a needle. You want to become, I don't know, it's like that everywhere. I don't like this mentality,
Mhm.
and I think you need to keep in mind that this mentality carries everywhere.
Absolutely. But there's just so much within lit RPG, is that like the subversion of it, that when you look at the other genres and you see like how the kind of the tropes, or sorry, the certain like themes of stories are like constant, like for a very long period of time. And you look at lit RPG and how fast it's moving through trends, it's ridiculous.
Yeah,
To be like, how we went from VR, then an oversaturation of VR, then we moved into, dungeon core, then the oversaturation of dungeon core, and then it was like, and you have tower climbers rising in popularity, but then you have the absolute wacky of like Doom Guy Isekai, Battle Mage Farmer, you have This Quest is Bullshit or Beware of Chicken, and
yeah,
then you have all these absolutely, like, one of the ones that was up on trending was Dressed to Kill, a seamstress lit RPG. And
yeah.
you just have to love the inventiveness and imaginative like that. It's like there's no right template to do this. You can come up with the wackiest stuff of all time, and as long as it's well written and it has a good idea, that the storytelling is good, then they're very much forgiving of the writing. So
Yeah. And if in case of this seamstress lit RPG, if that person would have heard to the gatekeepers, to those advisors,
mhm.
they would not have written this great story, you know. But they did it anyway, or they did it because they did not listen to these
Oh,
people, and we got a great story out of it.
I got told where in the community that my covers were trash, and that it was some things are sacred, and that I should change the title Wildcards because it was already taken by George R. R. Martin back in
Yeah.
1986. And I was like, how about fuck off?
Mm.
So, but I said that in a nice way, and I kept wildcards because I was like, you know what? What if I just make a more popular wildcards?
Yeah.
As in, like, what if I absolutely blow it out of the fucking water?
Yeah.
And then it'd be like, oh, George R. R. Martin stole it off Brian. Like, so, but I actually had to, like, one guy one starred me because he's just like, this has nothing to do with George R. R. Martin. and he got
Yeah.
review bombed so much that it was like 90 were against his review, and it was bombing his cred. So he's just like, hey, so I'll delete the review if you put up a disclaimer that's nothing to do with George R. R. Martin. I was like, the fact that it's an original work in lit RPG wasn't the clue. Okay. Like, anyway.
I hope that it didn't get to you, because one stars are like, you cannot avoid them.
Nope, the only one that ever got to me was a 3-star, and that was the first
Those are
ever
the
one I got.
harder. Yeah, those are the harder ones in general. I think because 3 stars means that this person like put some effort into evaluating your work, and like usually their feedback is like, man, yeah, I know, you're kind of right.
It was the first review I ever received on Wildcards, and it was a 3-star. Said,
Okay.
seems promising. We'll see. That was it.
Oh, then.
But that was, I was like, I'm a 3-star
I hope
author.
did they update it later on?
No, it's still
God
there.
damn it. Yeah.
But like, and that was only after like 3 or 4 chapters. And but I'm blue in the face from telling the story because I thought it was so funny that a friend of mine created the cover for it, and it was so good that I said I wouldn't be able to look her in the eye and say, I've stopped. I've just stopped writing it because of a 3-star review. So I kept going, and it was like, it had none of the rising star sort of qualities or anything like that, because I had gone on hiatus for 2.5 months after 4 chapters. So then I started clawing my way through the ranks and stuff, and I was like, we're never going to hit trending. And at chapter 17, I just told the little community I had, I was in like, you know what, this was amazing, and I don't care about being popular. It was just wonderful to be able to share this story with all of you. And chapter 18 is when it hit trending. And then it went, and it kept going up the ranks and stuff like that. And it peaked at number 7. And it was one of those ones that, and it just, front page, and it just kept flying under the radar. Anytime I released a chapter, mine went to number 1 on trending on the, like, what's the other reads. So if you go to the trending tab, mine was always number 1. I was like, what is going on? And it was just that there was people like, like 3,000, 4,000 people were just going in to read new chapters. And then it was in like, what is the story? And it just like shoots up. So
so here is an example of how I think it differs of how different people present stories, because one could have told your story as in the underdog that people were telling me that my cover is shit, and like, but I kept through it, like I hustled, and then I made it. Or you can say it in the wholesome version that you did, which is so much better, and so many more people can relate to you.
Yeah, and it's like, the other thing as well is people telling you like, never read the comments. I'm like, why? Someone made the time to write the comment. So I might as well read it. And the other thing as well is that as long as you have the mental resilience to understand that they're not attacking you, they're not attacking the story, it's that your words created an emotion in them, and that you might not necessarily agree with it, but you have to respect the time that they put in to reading it and giving it a shot. So when someone is insanely negative, I just go like, well, thank you so much for taking the time to read it. Sorry it didn't meet your expectations. Hopefully one of my future works will. And that's it. And
it does sound like because I've done this too, and it does sound like a corporate response to negative feedback. But like, we do understand that people can have a bad day, or like they just don't like it, and internet makes people respond to things in a much more exaggerated way. And it doesn't mean that they're troll. Maybe they had a bad day, and it happened that once I had a similar interaction, and I gave a similar response, and the guy was actually having a bad day. He said, "Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, we patched things over." But there are also people that actually attack you, and it's fine. Like, I guess it goes outside of writing, and it has more to do with your own character and like being comfortable and stuff like that.
I've been petty, Dimmy. I have been petty before. So like,
I mean, of course, and I also take pride in that, and it made my day. I was
oh
petty
no,
to another person.
I put up on the author note being like, sorry guys, it's just really difficult to write with all these negative comments. So you just like radicalize all of your good readers into
Like,
attacking the negative readers. And then
sorry, I thought you were fishing for compliments.
oh yeah, no, and it's a case of like just then it's a kind of like oh well, this is upsetting, or like doesn't really inspire me to write the next chapter, and then it's like literally everyone just goes into attack that
Yeah.
person. I was like, oh no, this was not my intention. Oh no.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be neutral. More, kill him more.
I had like this kind of like when you wake up angry and you want to pick fights online. I had like this thing I think it was last week, and I mentioned it to our Discord servers, and another author sent me an image that essentially it was like a self-care guide where it said, if you're angry, eat. If you are feeling that you're not worth, sleep. Like some kind of, oh man, it was so good.
Yeah,
And yeah, but I mean, I was all ready to fight scene when I saw that. But for next time
yeah,
maybe.
maybe so. So Chatfield put up a question like half an hour ago that we never
Okay.
got to, which is like, what was the scene you read or wrote that changed how you saw the world?
Oh man, that changed. This is fucking Chatfield there. Oof.
That's
Um,
why I ignored it for like half an hour. I still don't have an answer.
so it's it wasn't while I was writing it, but it was how I was trying to approach it. There is in this new book, in this new series, uh, there is a character who is extremely, uh, let's say, anti anything else but German,
Mhm,
and it's easy to dismiss. Certain peoples who have hateful feelings, like, oh yeah, he's a neo-Nazi or whatever. But I didn't want it to be like that. I wanted to be like a bit more fleshed out. So there were situations where I could give some more background onto how did this person reach a point in his life, in his like late 30s, where he has so much hate in him. And even though like it is humans against monsters, he
mhm,
still hates non-Germans. And so I was trying to understand, I was trying to think, I was speaking with people on how do they reach this way of life and what kind of background they have. And in most cases, it's abuse. I mean, it's always upbringing. So writing this character, who is an awful person, got me thinking on where um, where does the line stand between an abused child, someone who has a difficult upbringing, and an adult who is a horrible person, a horrible, hateful person. Where does this line stand? Where do we say, oh man, he had it so rough? Where do we change our line of thinking from saying, "Oh, he had a difficult upbringing. I'm
mhm.
sorry for him." Oh, no, he's a bastard. He should die. Like this kind of thinking of this person is horrible, and which of course goes outside of the book, right? What brought them here, and what would be like a good way to address issues such as this in society, so that we have less of that, less hateful people, less hate in general. Yeah.
So for me, the I didn't realize it at the time, but it was only when people read it and reacted to it that it changed how I perceived things. So when I started writing wildcards, I was writing a classist dystopia. I was writing this absolute hellscape of people at the bottom rung of society, completely indentured to the government or the medical, companies and stuff like that because of drug abuse and all this sort of stuff. And I made it the bleakest thing I could possibly imagine. And it was literally just advertisements of just everything just kind of like thrown in the face of these people, and the entire system designed to keep them down. and how you just see it of like through the main character of trying to, you know, bring himself up through those ranks and stuff like that, and trying to improve himself, and how the entire system is constantly knocking him back. And I wrote that being like, you know, excellent. This is a proper, you know, dystopian future that should be like horrifying to people. And
Oh,
and it was America. I accidentally wrote, and
yeah.
people started being like,
Relating with it.
people
Fuck.
started relating with it, and I just sat back because I had never experienced inequality, injustice, or anything like that because of the privilege I've grown up with,
Mm.
and the kind of like the demographic that I am and stuff. So I created something that I thought was along the lines of the slums within Blade Runner society or something like this, and yet people related to that horrible hellscape, and I was broken by that. I was so apologetic. I was like, this was not my intention, but I just wanted to write something visceral and really, really heartbreaking. And it had that effect, but not necessarily on the reader, but on me, by finding out that it was being related to. So that was a big one for me.
Yeah. Oof, that was tough.
But there's to put one on a more like happier trajectory. There's certain things that have changed the way I see writing. So yeah, it's in like there was one. I suppose on a happier tone, there was one story, same author for two examples. Have you ever read anything by Raymond D. Feist?
No, I don't think so.
So, so he would have read Serpent War Saga, the Rift War Saga, Magician of Darkness at Sethanon, Silverthorn. But one of my favorite moments of all time, and that was one of the main overarching themes is that when you were saying like building, sorry, all these things, yeah, um,
Absolutely.
yeah, on the money there, Chatfield. Um, it's the thing with Raymond D. Feist is that when you were saying about like the older generation passing it down to their children and those sort of themes, Feist was the first writer I saw that did that because he unapologetically allowed time to pass. So the characters that you start off with, which is like Prince Arutha, Jimmy the Hand, the petty thief that wants to become the Duke of Crondor, and you actually through like 50 years later, 60 years later, he is Duke James of Crondor, and you know you're like, and now it's his family, and how all of these things have changed because the landscape changes, the families change, the dynasties, but the enemies remain and they grow in power over this long period of time, and then it's their grandchildren and it's the next generation again. And like there's like some, and I thought that was really, really impactful because I had never actually seen a story deal with generational kind of like handing things down to the next in such a cohesive way.
Mm.
And that you still have like your magician or wizards or the elves that have like outlived everyone, and you're like the heartbreaking revelations when they eventually do pass on after like 12 books or something. But and you have all those things. But in one of those books, there was an instance that kind of just, it was one of my favorite oh fuck moments. And I literally was so happy that I was like, if this fucker gets a book, I'm reading it, and it's probably going to be one of my favorite books of all time. In the Talon of the Silver Hawk, which is like one of the later Feist books, it's no longer one of the later Feist books. It's now like, you know, mid-series, I suppose. But the bad guy in it was being mind controlled by a very old villain from the series, and had done all these horrendous things. And as penance for that, he was punished by being teleported to an island, which was surrounded by the enemy, the lizard men, like demons of sorts. And he's there, like, you know, chained. And he's like, when he finally gets his memories back in his mind, and he's like, I was used as a puppet. And it's just the most bleakest picture of, you're only introduced to this man for a few sentences, and he's just there going like, fuck, as in like, you know, I've been used and this, and I'm chained and I'm about to die. He sees like these things charging
Yeah.
in the distance, and he's like, it's like, am I going to die here? And he just grips the chains like, or am I going to take back my dukedom, Duke Caspar of Alasco? And he's like, or am I going to take it back the way I built it? And he starts swinging the chain, and I was like, oh my fucking god, I want to read everything about this man.
Yeah.
And the next book is called Exile's Return, and it's all about him. And I was like, this is my favorite character. And it was just that short moment of introducing a character with only a few sentences. I was like, that is so fucking powerful. Like,
Yeah.
just that imagery, that one moment, I was like, fuck. And that changes how I write characters or how I see them. It's like that, how you can make something so impactful with just a certain scene.
Yeah, in that sense, I would say. I mean, apart from books, because there are other mediums that affect
Yeah.
our writing, of course. I watched D&D, let's say, podcast. So I watched Critical Role, and there was this mini series that they were doing a run on how like a very cataclysmic event where gods were unleashed in the Matthew Mercer's world, and there was this scene where the group was like level 20 characters on top of their game, and they were on top of this magical society, and they could not avert the apocalypse. But there was this scene where two friends. I think one of them was like a pirate turned merchant, turned like very very rich, and another one was like a king's guard, like the anyway, a very powerful warrior, and they were fighting, and they were going to die, and the DMs started explaining their last moments, and that the two of you are fighting, and you know that your end is coming near, and for a second you remember how you were like 20-year-old fighting together, and like you remember all those years of friendship, and I was like, oh my god, why? And like moments such as this, like you need to have depth in the character. Like you cannot create moments without thinking of how they grew up, how they spent their time, and what let's say problems each of them had in the background, and when they met, how they resolved them, how they grew up, how they grew stronger together. I think this is one of the moments that made me rethink of how I write characters.
Yeah, no, it's I love that. And like even just spectacle. I see things almost cinematically in my head. So it's like kind of like, and I want to, so how wild cards came to be, other than the frustration with Ready Player One, was that I was like, I could fucking do this better. And my friends were like, then do it. And I was like, okay, I will.
That's how you
Um,
started writing?
yeah. So well, that's how I started writing it. I had written series before that were so shit, that like my friends, like I did ones like seriously, and my friends were like, oh yeah, no, that's pretty cool. But what about Sky Pirate? And I'm like, that piece of shit I threw together for fun, as in like to make fun of writing. And then they were like, it's amazing. I'm like, I fucking hate readers.
Yeah.
But it was a fun concept. But anyway, um but yeah, with wildcards, I had visualized a scene like pirate ships swirling around a maelstrom with a kraken at the center, but a void kraken which is able to teleport its tentacles in different directions and stuff. And it was like, and I was like, how do I increase the stakes of this? But how do I create the spectacle of like this being admired by people? So that's why it became VR, because I wanted a live audience watching this happening. And I wanted to create like all these sense of stakes. It had to be in moonlight, because there's reasons, and it's really interesting. And it was fantastic. And just writing those reactionary scenes, people cried. People cried, and it was amazing. Like, and I loved it. That was one of the things that really kind of got me. But the spectacle of those things, like when I even look at the likes of Megamind, the movie, like, did you ever see that animated movie Megamind?
No.
It's so shit. But it had the final scene at the end. It's just absolute spectacle. Of it's Will Ferrell as a blue alien,
Oh
who
man.
grows up, who's a villain growing up. It's but the finale of that, of like him overcoming his kind of like thing, is like, to stop the true villain, I need to be a hero, despite him always being a villain. Is like, it's really two villains against each other, and it's just wonderful. You have like Guns N' Roses, and it's just brilliant. It's but
Sounds
yeah.
like Despicable Me.
Well, the epic moments and stuff, you can't always choose them.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
like, yeah, like you have all these highbrow things, and I'm like, Mega Mind.
No, Despicable Me. It's not a highbrow thing.
No, I haven't watched all of them. I only watched the first one.
Okay, yeah,
So,
yeah.
but I was thinking at some point, because like I should probably read your story after an hour and 45 minutes. Might be a good point to read.
Yeah, I don't
read
know the timetable for this video, so you give
Well, you might
the
actually beat
shots.
out Michael Head. We went for 2 hours with Michael Head.
Mm.
So you might actually beat that out just because, we like each other way more than I like Michael. That's it. Yeah.
Oh, you know
Yeah.
just what to say, Brian J. Nordon.
Yeah. You're a favorite to me. What can I say? But yeah, no, it's you're going to Dragon Con, aren't you?
No, no, too
Why
many
are you like
things.
this? Why are you
Too,
like this?
I don't know. I overbooked myself this year, like both in terms of, I mean, not conventions that much. I'm only going to the 220 books ones here in Europe, but in terms of holidays.
So I'm not going to see you this year.
When is the Ireland thing happening?
Next year. Next
Next
February.
year? Then next year probably. No, I'm not
Oh,
going to Vegas. Went to Vegas this year. No, last year. Yeah, and I saw so many great people, but I have big FOMO. I guess is it still called FOMO because I got sick after
yeah.
after we went out after we had dinner. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
miss so many things. I miss so many people. Yeah.
I really loved how you did not hold back on explaining how fucked you were.
Yeah,
You went in visceral detail, and it
I
was
think we
magical.
need to raise awareness of these kinds of things that they happen and they are absolutely human. I only got out that day to go to one talk, Janet's talk,
Yeah,
and then yeah, straight to bed.
but no, it was very very funny. Sorry, not I'm sorry that you went through that, but your
Hey, man,
explanation of it was
it
very
is
entertaining.
I'm just yeah. I'm sad that I didn't see more people, and I'm sad that I didn't go to Grand Canyon because I was supposed to go with my girlfriend, and she's still angry at me whenever I mention it.
Yeah, well, you could always go to Vegas this year and go to the Grand Canyon.
No, no,
Yeah,
no. We have a lot of things.
yeah.
Yeah,
But no, we're going to have to arrange a European kind of thing at some point.
yeah,
But yeah, it'd be nice to do more meetups and stuff. Like Chatfield just arriving in Dublin one weekend was major fun. He
yeah.
just arrived. He was just like, I got an Airbnb, and I was like, oh my fucking god. Um, like there's human Airbnbs and then there's Chatfield Airbnbs. So, and I said to him, he was like, oh, are we going drinking in like Seville or Amsterdam? I was like, no, I'm not going to make them, but I'd love to go on a piss up with you. He's like, Italy, and I'm like, go on. So, so yeah, I'm looking forward to that now. We'll send pictures to really amplify your FOMO, so don't worry.
No, I mean, okay, yeah. Yeah, okay. I'll be glad to see you guys having fun.
Yeah, but okay, so I will start off with this. I will start off with Physics of the Apocalypse, the first chapter. So, Geneva, if you're listening in the background, set the timer. So, we probably won't be able to get through it all. It is a meaty boy, which you would expect from a 270,000 word book, that we have a 4,000 word chapter to start us off.
I'm getting
Uh,
better, trying.
yeah, yeah. Well, no. It's nothing to ever, work. So, anyway, starting now, Geneva. So, I don't think it is very useful to speculate on what God might or might not be able to do. Rather, we should examine what he actually does with the universe we live in. All our observations suggest it operates according to well-defined laws. These laws may have been ordained by God, but it seems he does not intervene in the universe to break the laws, at least not once he set the universe going. By Stephen Hawking. Liam Jackson was feeling lucky today. Oktoberfest was always a gamble regarding the weather conditions. However, when he exited his apartment in Munich, the sun was shining, and only because of his careful nature did he put a thin jacket in his backpack. Cargo pants and a white t-shirt would work just fine. Of course, the weather was not warm because of his luck. Liam Jackson was a man of science and would never believe in luck any more than he would believe that the earth was flat. He did appreciate the fact that he would not have to endure the warm humidity of September, though. The antithesis of a festival that is called Oktoberfest, taking place primarily in September, did not escape him, and he smiled as he exited the building. He had, of course, done extensive browsing on the internet, or as non-scientists called it, research, the night before. Apparently, the first occasion that Oktoberfest was celebrated was in the early 19th century for the wedding of the Bavarian prince. That was indeed in mid-October and was in fact such a striking hit with the locals that they decided to do it every year afterward. Though the initial festivals lasted 5 days, they quickly grew to 16 as more and more people flocked for a celebration of endless drinking. It was only natural that the dates would eventually be pushed earlier, so that the weather would be less of a hindrance to the 19th century partygoers. One could only imagine what partying in the 1800s looked like. Liam opened Google Maps and checked the tram he needed to take in order to reach the tent where he'd be meeting with his childhood friend. Making sure he remembered the correct tram number, he moved closer to the sign that noted his ride would be there in 2 minutes. He had specifically chosen this apartment when he moved to Munich because of its good public transport connections. He could use it to go to the university, where he was doing his actual research over the past few months, as well as have easy access to the festival. The University of Munich was a great place for an astrophysicist to do an exchange semester at, and Liam was thankful that he was accepted. He was also quite satisfied with himself for timing his exchange semester with the Oktoberfest, something that all of his older colleagues back at Columbia University praised as the experience of a lifetime. The tram stopped in front of him exactly on time, and only then did Liam realize just how crowded the tram stop was. Not only that, but the vehicle itself was almost filled with people. This did not stop the tourists and local youth who were brimming with the energy equivalent of a Red Bull-filled lake, and the anticipation of drinking their way through their first night of Oktoberfest to rush in. The flow of people carried Liam inside the tram, and he barely had time to bring his backpack to the front before he was sandwiched between two quite peculiar individuals. On one side was a tall blonde man who was wearing a hat with a beer can on each side of his head, both connected to straws which he sucked on greedily. 3 horizontal colored stripes were painted on each of his cheeks, red, white, and blue, which of course was a dead giveaway that he was from the Netherlands, even if Liam wasn't able to recognize his language. On his other side was an equally loud young lady who Liam could have sworn was a student at his university. His postdoc research position meant that he had very limited interactions with the students of his department, much less with the thousands of the whole university. Besides, students never wore dirndls in class. I have no idea what that word is. By the looks of how pressed her breasts were and the cheap quality of the fabric, her dress wasn't one of the traditional, extremely expensive ones, but rather one that was hastily bought on Amazon a day before and delivered with the almighty one-day Prime shipping. This, of course, did not make the young lady feel any less festive, as she was laughing loudly with her friends, something that Liam was completely not used to from his time living in the city. Trams and trains in Germany were generally quiet places, especially during the times that he used them, when people were coming from or going to work. They were more prone to spend their time on their smartphones, while quite a few were using electronic devices to read or even holding actual paperbacks. But the bottom line was that they were relatively quiet, and those who talked loudly on their phones were not appreciated. The riot was today's ride, however, was completely different to his experiences so far, and since his German skills were practically non-existent and forbidding him from understanding what was being said, he let his mind wander to the facts he had read about the festivities. Liam was always a numbers guy and greatly appreciated the order that came with statistics and quantifiable qualities. 500 chefs and thousands of helpers would work every day for the next 2.5 weeks to cater 400,000 people. 400,000 people wanting to eat every single day. Just by these numbers, he could already tell that this would absolutely be the experience of a lifetime, just like his colleagues had suggested. The tram doors opened and a new wave of people pushed their way in. Just when he had thought there was absolutely no space for anyone else, about a dozen more managed to enter before the tram doors attempted to close. 3 legs, 2 shoulders, an inflatable in the shape of a beer mug, and a head stopped the doors from shutting. As if it was some kind of challenge, the people outside who knew they would have to wait for the next tram now pushed these unfortunate ones inside, shouting "Eins, zwei, drei." The driver of the tram was opened his window and angrily shouted something at them as security people cleared them away. The push was enough for the crowds to fit inside the tram, and the doors closed once again, allowing Liam to return to his thoughts. 3,000 waiters were hired each year to serve the festival visitors, and each of them would pace 5 full marathons before the Oktoberfest was over. And that was just by walking the beer tents during their shifts, which of course were 15 hours per day. A very hard work, but one that would pay for their whole annual tuition at the university. Not as exciting if one considered how cheaper university tuition was in Germany compared to the US, but still nothing to laugh at. The next stop came much too soon, but fortunately the doors did not open this time. Liam heard one of the doors at the back open, yet since nobody had pressed the stop button in his vicinity, the driver had opted not to let any more people in this time. Liam was grateful for it, as he was already getting annoyed by how crowded the tram was. In his opinion, humans were not meant to be so close to each other, or rather so close to so many each others. This was public means of transport, not a swingers club. The door closed and he was returned to his own thoughts, with the sweet melody of competitive belching having now replaced the loud conversations. At first he thought that hiring 2,000 security guards just for the premises of the festival was an exaggeration, but knowing the efficiency of running things that he had been told was typical for Germans, he actually believed this number. Seeing how drunk and rowdy people were before the sun had set, and even before they had reached any of the beer tents, he knew the security people would have their hands full over the next weeks. The tram slowed down yet again, but did not stop at all this time. Since nobody was getting off at the station, the people waiting there banged their hands on the moving vehicle, but ultimately gave up and turned to walk. This was the last stop before the main entrance of the Wiesn Festival, which was another name for Oktoberfest. Perhaps the most obscure and admittedly interesting fact that Liam had read about it was that 30,000 pretzels would be consumed daily, while more than 7 million litres of beer would make their way into and out of the festival goers' bodies over the course of the festivities. That was almost enough to fill 3 Olympic-sized swimming pools. With so much alcohol flowing, there was bound to be a lot of interesting situations happening at any given time. The tram doors opened and the people rushed out like a river of frenzied beer seekers. The sun was still an hour from setting, at which point he would be meeting with his friend. However, he had decided to come a bit earlier so he could walk through the festival grounds by himself. After all, it was one thing to watch videos about it and another being there to smell the sausages and beer-infused sweat. The alternative for his afternoon would have been lurking in forums and on Reddit, trying to find information on the upcoming press release from the James Webb Space Telescope team. Dozens of theories about what potential discoveries were made by humanity's greatest telescope were floating around the net, but nobody could tell exactly what it would be about. The scientists responsible for observing the universe at its closest to the Big Bang state had made a surprising announcement that they would be providing some exciting news the day after. The whole astrophysics community was sitting on the edge of their seats, but no matter how many doors Liam had knocked at, he could not get any answers. Being a pragmatic person, he decided to suppress his enthusiasm and not waste any more time in idle speculation. Perhaps whatever discovery was to be revealed would be so important that he would not have time to visit the festival again. What's more, he had not met Dan, his childhood friend, since they had graduated high school and he had left to study. The entrance to the festival grounds was littered with dozens of rickshaw bicycle taxis, bringing more people by the minute, along with quite a few beer bikes. Said beer bikes seemed to sit exactly at the intersection of engineering ingenuity and love of beer, as they looked like minibuses stripped down to their wheels and floor. The whole vehicle was moving by means of pedaling, much like a bicycle, from multiple patrons who were sitting on the stools around a bar drinking beer. Liam could only hope that the person behind the steering wheel was not partaking in the drinking, but on that day, it hardly seemed to matter at all. The air itself was filled with the scent of alcohol, freshly baked pretzels, and grilled sausages. Moving on into the festival grounds, however, and walking by the area where the toilets were, a different scent hit him, and he could only imagine how bad this might get as the hours progressed. Looking at hundreds of stalls selling anything from candies shaped like beer jugs to cheap imitations of the traditional lederhosen, his first stop was in front of the Olympia train ride. Watching the entirety of the ride from the point of view of someone riding it on YouTube was quite different to looking at the people who willingly put themselves through being hit by 5G forces, all while screaming. Astronauts would have to endure 3Gs, while fighter jets pilots would sometimes have to pull through 8 or 9 times Earth's gravity, but those were completely different situations. Expanding the reach of the humankind and protecting one's life and the lives of those they love is something completely different to putting yourself through a course designed to bring you close to or even beyond fainting, all in the name of fun. The Olympia looping, which had its name taken from the Olympic circles that its loops resembled, was the largest transportable roller coaster in the world, and Liam didn't find it hard to believe at all. The train was running at speeds upward of 60 miles per hour, and it was fascinating to see the mixture of fear and excitement on people's faces as their ride took yet another sharp turn. Equally fascinating was the sound of coins and the occasional jewelry dropping from the passengers at their carts were rushing up and down each loop. Something moving at the bottom of the ride drew Liam's attention, where everyone was focused on the train riding high above the ground. He could have sworn he saw a little monkey running through the steel rails and picking up coins. By the time he had looked over again, however, there was absolutely nothing there, so he pushed the thought out of his mind. After all, how could a monkey ever be loose in the middle of a metropolis like Munich? Liam continued his self-tour of the Viersenwiese, the open space that served as the official ground for the Oktoberfest. A fresh pretzel was just what he needed since he had only eaten a light lunch. He approached one of the stalls that was ran by a large man wearing a red checkered shirt and expensive-looking lederhosen with knee-high white socks. Eine Pretzel, bitte, Liam said, putting the pieces of the few words he knew in German together. The man turned to face him and, without a hint of a smile nor judgment for his broken accent, asked him, Klein oder groß? Thankfully, the question was within his limited vocabulary. Gross, he replied, stating that he wanted a large pretzel. €3, bitchen, the large man said, and grabbed a pretzel from the large box in front of him. I'm conscious that we went over 10 minutes and I can't speak German. So,
I love it.
oh man.
I haven't read this for a while, and it's so nice to hear it from your voice.
Oh, thank you so much. I think I'll have to stop there. I think I'm halfway. So,
yeah, no worries.
yeah. But no, as in like it's fun, it's informative, and like I'm learning as I'm reading, which is interesting.
I tried. It is a slow start. I just try to show that he's a man of.
If it was a fast start at 270,000 words, then we'd be in for a fucking thrill ride.
It's just a scientific state of mind. But there will be a monkey.
Yeah, excellent. And does he get assimilated into? Does he get a class? Thief.
The monkey? No, but he still continues stealing things. His name is Coins, with a Z.
Coins. How was my German?
It was great. Maybe better than mine.
It was funny. So, but yeah, no, I'm going to send this to some of my German friends that were asking about Lit RPG. So that'll be fun.
If you want, I can send them. They can contact me, and I can send them the German. It's already
amazing.
Yeah,
fantastic. It's just my friend. She's a PhD. She just got her PhD in linguistics. Okay. So yeah.
So I thought you were gonna say a PhD in like
astrophysics,
and I'm like, maybe not. There were some creative choices made.
Yeah, no, with linguistics, like, yeah, this is definitely German. Like, so. But yeah, no, that'd be good fun. But no, like, it's a good start, and it's like very nice, easy pacing. So it's like, informative. It's it's really building the scene. You get like the what was that word? Sorry, the one that I absolutely fucked up. Just no, it was just before the girl on the her dress.
Dirndl is the dress that when you think of Oktoberfest, there are girls who wear this. Yeah. This is a dirndl, and it's so I don't know about it's definitely not in all parts of Germany, but when I used to live in Austria, when you go to a wedding, you can go smart casual, or you can go like suit, tuxedo, and then dirndl and lederhosen is like above everything, and it's super expensive clothes.
That's amazing. Yeah. Just for everyone kind of listening in, the word he's saying is spelled Dirndls. It is missing a lot of vowels for me to pronounce it.
Dirndls, yeah.
So I was like, I don't want to out Dimmy for spelling something wrong, and it turns out I just couldn't pronounce it. So that's good. Happy days. But yeah, is there any other questions for Dimmy in the chat? Or Dimmy, do you have any questions for me that you've been holding
Yes.
on for a while?
Are
Oh God,
you are you in love, Brian?
no, I'm not. So
Not even with
I.
life?
Oh, sorry. Well, um, with life, I am.
Why are you thinking about it, man?
So sorry. No, no, no. I mean that like there's a lot that I need to improve on with myself. But as I am right now, as I was talking about self-improvement and like maturity over the years, I'm happy with where I'm pacing in a
Mm,
lot of aspects of my life.
yeah.
So I'm currently in my own home. I currently have a manageable mortgage. I have a good job. I have good prospects with the writing. The fact that I could potentially in the future be full time with writing is something that just feels absolutely magic. And I was always worried about being a full time writer for the simple reason is that I thought it would be a very lonely existence. And now that the author tribe is just so wonderful and inviting, and that it's kind of taken away any of the issues.
Mm.
Um, Dimmy being my matchmaker, TJ, would be pretty fucking great. As in, like, I'd say he has great taste. But yeah, or he'd just go car crash TV and be like, "This will be entertaining at least." So, I don't like that laugh, Dimmy. So, deny it. So, but I trust Dimmy more than Chatfield. That's all I'll say. And that's not saying much.
I haven't been that drunk.
No, no, no. But we'll
Mm.
get you there.
Yeah.
You're able to drink though, aren't you?
Not. I don't think as much as Chatfield, but at least if I drink, I don't start speaking Spanish. Because Chatfield was like, I was telling him something. He was like, "See, see, see, see." I'm like, "What?"
Oh, he's a disaster, but he's our disaster and he's our
Yeah.
favorite, so it's
Yeah.
fine. But yeah, no, as in like love, yeah, as in I am in love with a lot of things, so it's good. No, I love a lot of things. I'm not in love, so that's what I'll say.
Okay. Okay.
Uh, but yeah, does that satisfy the question?
Yes. Yes. I think you passed
Wonderful,
the test.
excellent. Well, I think this is everything, and we could probably wrap up because I think it's past midnight for you.
Yeah, but it's fine. I'm not working tomorrow. I'm being an author.
Yeah. Oh, that thing you do every day. Yeah, no, I get
Yeah.
it. But no, it's been an absolute pleasure, Dimmy, having you on, being able to read the story and just kind of go through, like, and just get to know you a bit more and just the kind of questions and stuff. And it was very, very good fun.
It was amazing. It was great talking to you, Brian. You are a great person. You are worth it. You are very loved.
Oh, well, thank you very, very much. I might need to just like take that clip from this recording and just play that to myself every night in your exact voice. I think
Not
it's
every
perfect.
night. Now you're making it weird. Play it every morning when you wake up. That's better.
I think it's less risk if I do it at night.
Okay.
But yeah, but yeah, no, like well, I'll see you in in Vegas, TJ. Like am I not
Yeah,
good
thank
enough?
you,
Okay,
TJ.
yeah. But but no, it's yeah. Look, it was just like it was an absolute pleasure. So I think we can probably wrap up there. Thank you to everyone that commented and watched and sat through this. We're sorry, but thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and you can cut us off whenever you want, Geneva.
Bye.